Hey guys, Aaron Cybertron Zhang here, and today I'm back with another episode of Road to Ranked, where I climb the online regulation VGC ladder in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet and provide live commentary as I go. In this video, I'll be trying out a really interesting strategy featuring Clangorous Soul, Kommo-O, and Psych Up Espeon. The idea is that Kommo-O can boost its stats fairly quickly through Clangorous Soul, and you obviously take a little bit of damage from doing so, but you have Sinistcha on the team to heal your HP, you have Drain Punch on Kommo-O to recover as well, and Espeon has Psych Up to very quickly boost its stats as well. Once Espeon boosts its stats, then it can go for stored power and deal massive amounts of damage, and it is quite a bulky set. You also have some fun things like Fling King's Rock Tornadus to get flinches, which your opponents will often be caught off guard by, and Pokemon like Iron Hands and Hisu and Arcanine. As always, I'll do a quick breakdown of the team, but if you want to just skip to the battles, check out the timestamps down in the description below. And thanks so much as always for joining me. If you enjoy, would really appreciate it if you consider leaving a like in the video or subscribing to the channel. It really helps out a ton. Anyway, let's dive into things. Breaking things down, as always, rental, pace, and team creator are linked down in the description below. And question of the day, with us using Espeon, I want to know if you could buff the evolutions, how would you do so? Down in the comment section below. Now, before diving into the specifics of this team, the first thing that I want to say is that this team is just not very easy to use because it requires a lot of setup, right? You spend a turn going for Clangorous Soul and Kommo-O, you spend a turn maybe going for Psych Up with Espeon to boost itself up as well, and so it requires a lot of setup, and as a result, you open yourself to getting attacked those turns. And so I played more practice games with this team than most teams that I featured, and even then I don't feel like I have 100% grasp on the team, and that's because it just plays in a very different playstyle than a lot of other teams featured in Regulation E. But it's so fun. You have Kommo-O, you have Espeon, and if you get these Pokemon properly enabled, they can really just sweep through teams fairly quickly, which I think is awesome. So I just wanted to start off with that because I think I feature all kinds of different teams on this channel. Some are a lot easier to just pick up and use immediately. Others like this I think really have a lot of nuance behind it, and there are so many small interactions that you really need to consider. So just letting you all know. Now, the first Pokemon I want to talk about is Kommo-O, and I think this Kommo-O already is really interesting because it has Clear Amulet, as well as the fact that it does not have Clanging Scales, which is typically the most common offensive attack on Kommo-O. Instead, it's got Drain Punch, Clangorous Soul, Protect, and Iron Head. The idea behind Iron Head and Steel Terra, first of all, is that you just counter Fluttermane, which of course is one of the most common Pokemon in the format, and you go from something that just gets wrecked by Fluttermane to something that can knock out Fluttermane, which I think is awesome. In addition, it is just a pretty consistent attack because once you Steel Terra, you get the boost. You can deal like 50-60% to so many Pokemon that basically don't resist it, which is awesome. And Clear Amulet is really cool because it prevents the Intimidate. This is a fully physical Kommo-O, and so with that Clear Amulet, you're able to ignore those stat drops as well as other stat drops, obviously. But you know, my experience is a lot of people will bring Landorus against this team composition thinking, oh, I'm just going to intimidate your Kommo-O. Kommo-O's like, well, I have Clear Amulet. I don't care about that. I'll deal over 50% with Iron Head and just 2-hit KO you, basically. So the idea here is that Kommo-O is decently speedy, but you'll have to go for example, 2 Clangorous Souls if you want to outspeed something like Max Speed Fluttermane. But the idea is that after a Clangorous Soul, you just become pretty bulky and you take advantage of all of your stats across the board. And Steel Terra is just really essential here in dealing with Fluttermane as well as other typings like Ice, for example. Espeon is the next Pokemon I want to talk about because it's so interesting. The idea behind this Espeon is to copy Kommo-O's boosts from Clangorous Soul. So you've got the Psych Up here, and you're able to boost yourself immediately after Kommo-O is able to set up. One thing to note is that the Espeon here is faster than Kommo-O. So you can't just lead something like Kommo-O Espeon and go for Clangorous Soul into a Psych Up immediately. I think if you wanted to modify the team, that would be actually a pretty cool modification. Give this more speed EVs, drop some from HP or special defense, for example, or attack. And then it means that you have another lead threat of Kommo-O Espeon. You can lead Kommo-O Espeon, but then it often results in going for Clangorous Soul Protect on turn 1 into a Psych Up on turn 2. But the main thing here is that you're going to want to figure out how to get Espeon out after Kommo-O gets enabled and then go from there. For example, a lot of different leads. You can really lead anything with Kommo-O with this team, but Tornadus Kommo-O is really effective because it pressures with Tailwind. Like, one thing that I often like to do is protect Tailwind and then fling the King's Rock to flinch something, then go for the Clangorous Soul on turn 2. And then, for example, switch Tornadus out into Espeon, protect or attack with Kommo-O on turn 3, and then Psych Up on the subsequent turn. So that's one way you can get Espeon in, for example. The Fling King's Rock combo I think is just really interesting, but it makes so much sense on this set in particular because denying just one attack really can fully enable Kommo-O. Iron Hands is also a really great lead with Kommo-O because you can just fake out plus go for the Clangorous Soul immediately, and so then you can go for something like Protect, Volt Switch out, go into Espeon, go for Psych Up, and then play from there. So The Tornadus and Iron Hands here, I mean, this Iron Hands is fairly standard. The main thing to note is that you have a little bit less bulk because you have Speed EVs, and the Speed EVs is just valuable against opposing Iron Hands, where you can just fake them out if they lead Iron Hands and then just go for the setup. And then you also have Volt Switch as well instead of Heavy Slam, so your matchup against like Fluttermane and Unfairies, for example, maybe you don't do as much damage, but the Volt Switch is nice in pivoting out and then getting Kommo in. Tornadus here, like I mentioned, has the standard moves, but Fling King's Rock is the main thing that is really going to catch opposing teams off guard. I've never actually used this before, so I think it's really cool because very few people on ladder expect it, and one good turn with Kommo or Espeon can just blow the game wide open, right? You've got Hisu and Arcanine with Choice Band here. This is just an offensive set that's designed to optimize for damage. The main thing is that it doesn't have like Terra Blast, but you've just got normal Terra E-Speed, Max Attack, and then you have Head Smash as well. Head Smash is a pretty volatile move because it's only 80% accuracy, but with base 150 power, it can get knockouts that Flare Blitz otherwise doesn't get the KO. And so it's nice because it's like, okay, would I rather have a 0% chance of KOing with Flare Blitz, or would I rather just have an 80% chance of KOing with Head Smash, right? And so that's one thing to consider. The final Pokemon on this team is Sinistcha, which is just really easily one of my favorite Pokemon in this format. And the idea behind it, of course, is to have a defensive switch in and also offer the hospitality for Kommo and Espeon, because often you're going to take a lot of damage with these Pokemon. The cool thing, by the way, is that you've got Draining Kiss as well as the Drain Punch, and so these Pokemon can heal a lot just from these moves, but having Sinistcha just adds even more recovery to the mix, right? So, for example, there are a lot of games where I think I will go with Kommo plus one of Tornadus or Iron Hands. I'll have Espeon to copy the Kommo, and then I'll have Sinistcha as the fourth to be able to heal both of these. I think one of the things that I've learned while playing with this team is like it's hard to bring Espeon into a lot of matchups actually, and so don't feel like you need to lean into it. It's like totally fine to just go with like Kommo, Tornadus, Iron Hands, and Arcanine, or one of Sinistcha over like Hands and Arcanine. In fact, the reason for that is because Espeon, if it does not get the Psych Up off, is just complete dead weight. Like, it's really hard to get value out of this Pokemon if you do not get the Psych Up off. And so, yeah, that's one reason to consider not bringing it. So this is a really unique Pokemon in that if it is able to get this strategy off, it is absolutely amazing. But if not, it is just completely useless. So it's like super high risk, high reward in terms of use. So I already listed some of the ways to play with it, but yeah, I think generally I'm considering leading Kommo often with Tornadus, with Hands, maybe Arcanine. You could go Sinistcha Kommo. The downside is that you can't take advantage of hospitality, but in some matchups, maybe you want to just go for Rage Powder into the setup immediately and then pivot out. But you can also just lean into offense, like Iron Hands, Hisu, and Arcanine are both really powerful Pokemon. Sinistcha can heal those, and you can use Tornadus to set up speed control for it. And sometimes you don't necessarily need to go for Clangorous Soul, right? Like, you could just go for Steel Terra, Iron Head onto Fluttermane, or just Drain Punch into something that takes super effective damage. So don't Tunnel Vision immediately on always clicking Clangorous Soul, but of course this is going to be kind of your go-to move. Also, Overcoat and the Magic Bounce here are just amazing abilities because it gives you immunity to like Spore, for example, and it just means that Amoonguss is that much easier to deal with. So yeah, the key thing I would consider is when is it actually appropriate to bring Espeon out versus when should I keep it on the bench. And I think I keep it on the bench if I don't feel like I have the right opportunity to get Psych Up off, where it's like, oh, my opponent will just KO Espeon as I bring it out. And so yeah, keep that in mind. But now let's quickly highlight some weaknesses. So in terms of weaknesses, the first thing is something I already mentioned, but with Espeon specifically, like I said, if you are not able to get the Psych Up off, if Kommo faints before Espeon comes out, this Pokemon is just completely useless, and you'll probably just lose the game, quite frankly. I think Espeon is just complete dead weight in most matchups if it doesn't get boosted. So keep that in mind, because it means that if you are bringing this Pokemon into the matchup, you have to play super, super well with Kommo and Espeon to make sure you get that Psych Up off. Kommo, I think, has a couple of weaknesses. First of all, because you're not running Clanging Scales and you're running just like fighting plus steel coverage, there are actually a lot of Pokemon and typings that can wall you. For example, flying type Pokemon can be a little bit annoying, especially like Pelipper. I ran into a Pelipper and I was like, okay, neither of my moves really do much. I ran into a Basket Legion in practice. I think Ghost types in particular can also be really annoying, especially if they have a secondary type that allows them to resist steel as well. For example, Basket Legion, Golden Go, those Pokemon can be annoying. And I think that flying type Pokemon can be annoying because like Drain Punch obviously just doesn't do much against them, right? I also think one thing against this Kommo is there are a lot of times where I get set up and I'm like, oh, all I need to do is simply Drain Punch. Like, there's a Chew on the field, there's a Champal on the field, but then they switch into Fluttermane. And I think that with this team, defensive switches can actually be a huge pain because it's like you spend all this time setting up and you're ready to get this one really big attack off, but because you don't have like super consistent damage, a defensive switch can just completely negate a turn and then the opponent is able to get a lot off in return. So that's something that I think is really scary as well. And as a result, that's why I think this team isn't necessarily the easiest to play with. And sometimes you feel like enabled to, or you feel like you have to make these bold predictions, right? Where it's like, oh, I'm going to Iron Head a Chi-Yu because it's going to switch into Flutter Mane, for example. So that's one thing that can be pretty scary. And also with Kommo, I think just bursting it down with damage on turn 1, and then if you like have fast Pokemon and Tailwind on the opposing side, I think that can be really scary. I think Taunt is really troublesome for this as well because the Tornadus here is in like max speed, so if you're up against an opposing Tornadus, they can taunt you. I think with this team, you rely on priority a decent amount with Fake Out and taunts, for example, in the beginning of the game. And so if you have a way to deny the priority like Farigiraf or Indeedee, for example, with Psychic Terrain, I think that can also be pretty scary. So those are just a couple of things I run into. Also, like for example, nothing on this team actually takes really super effective, or everything takes like a lot of damage from ghost type attacks, for example. So Flutter Mane lets Smart and doesn't get baited into clicking Dazzling Gleam or Moonblast can just lock into Shadow Ball and do a lot of damage. I think that can be scary. And I think Trick Room I've struggled a little bit against as well, where it's like I'd spend all this time getting set up, but then like I have to stall out my Trick Room as well. My opponent's Trick Room, I'm not really dealing that much damage either. So those are just some things that I've run into that have given me trouble. And I think also the last thing to note is, you know, with these Pokemon, you can boost up your stats, but Urshifu could just get crits through them. So it's like a Urshifu with Searching Strikes or Wicked Blow, especially if you commit your Terra to Kommo, for example, can also be a huge pain. So yeah, for those reasons, like I would say this team is not exactly like super anti-meta. It's not like it just beats all the top teams out there, and you are gonna have to work for it, but if you are able to get the wins, it feels so satisfying. So yeah, anyway, that's it for the breakdown. Let's get into the games. Okay, we've got an Armarouge with Indeedee, Tornadus, Regidrago, Urshifu, and Ogerpon. Indeedee Armarouge is interesting. I think this can actually be a really good Espeon match. The main thing is that they have their own Tornadus as well. And with Indeedee, it's harder to get the Fake Out off with Iron Hand. So I'm thinking something like a Tornadus Kommo lead. Espeon in the back. I think Hands probably doesn't come out here, so it's between Arcanine and then Sinistcha. Urshifu, if it's Water Urshifu, is scary. But I'm wondering if that's going to be the case because they have 2 fire types, so Tornadus carrying Sunny Day would make some sense. We could bring in Sinistcha for healing, but with the dual fires, I think it's a little bit harder to execute. The healing on Kommo is always nice, though, but I guess one of my other questions is how easy is it for me to actually deal that much damage with Kommo? Like, Drain Punch is okay, but yeah, I think I actually prefer Hisuian Arcanine here because I want a little bit more damage pressure. But I think Espeon can actually be huge here if I can get it going. Like, for example, if my opponent leads with Indeedee plus Armarouge, I think it could be interesting to go for something like Fling onto the Armarouge. I've also run into a lot of weak armor, weakness policy, and Endure Armarouges recently, so that's something to be aware of. And I guess if they lead into the Armarouge, like, why not just go for Follow Me, right? But it's going to be Tornadus, Regidrago. Okay. That works for me. I mean, do we just trade Tailwinds here? I'd steal Terra. Tailwind. I could also, I think, Tailwind Protect turn 1 here. Because I'm worried about them taunting Kommo to deny me the setup. I guess I could just taunt Tornadus. Okay, I think I'm just going to go for it. Tailwind and Protect turn 1, because I think it is really important to get our boost up. And I think this might bait out a Protect from Regidrago or a Terra. And if it's Steel Terra Drago, then I can hit you for super effective with Drain Punch in subsequent turns. Okay, that works. If we just trade Tailwinds here, I'm perfectly fine with that outcome. Because then I can go for the Fling play next turn, or taunt onto their Tornadus. Okay, yeah, we just trade Tailwinds. That's okay. I think the main thing I just was a little bit wary of was like committing my Terra immediately and then just getting hit by a taunt. I guess the problem now is they could still taunt me this next turn. It's just going to be Dragon Energy. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. See if this gets the one-hit KO. It does not. Nice. Cool. With that, I think I'm happy to go for Fling onto their Regidrago, Steel Terra now, and then Clangorous Soul. And I think if you're my opponent, you're probably incentivized to just click Dragon Energy plus Bleakwind Storm. If we get this setup, then it'll work out perfectly, because then the subsequent turn I can bring out Espeon, I can Drain Punch into the Regidrago, and then I can go for Psych Up onto Kommo-O. And that'll have been the perfect kind of 3-turn setup. So let's see if we can get that. It's Icy Wind, actually. Okay. So Tornadus survives with 1 here, but because if they have Icy Wind, obviously they'll be able to drop my speed, which is actually pretty annoying here, I would say. Because it means they get the Dragon Energy off before I move. But Kommo-O doesn't take that much damage from it. Icy Wind is decently common on Tornadus, so I shouldn't be like super shocked to see that. It does make things a little bit more interesting for us here. But I'll get the Clangorous Soul off. Yeah, I would have been better off just clicking Clangorous Soul on turn 1, I think. I was so wary of Taunt, but did I really need to show it that much respect? Probably not. Okay, so we get our boosts. So they can go for another Icy Wind. I think I'd like to bring out Espeon right now. This puts us at +1 speed. And actually, yeah, because of the Clear Amulet here, you're not actually dropping our speed. So, yeah, this actually works out perfectly. It's because the Drago is just faster than Kommo-O, but now we're just faster than Drago. So even though we're pretty low HP, I can actually just go for Psych Up onto this, and then just Drain Punch onto Regidrago. I think one of the tricky things about using this team is remembering Kommo-O's speed, just in general. For example, like, you're going to need to use Clangorous Soul twice if you want to outspeed Fluttermane, but yep, now we're just faster. I get that Drain Punch off, and that's a one-hit knockout with our boost. So that's the thing, like, Kommo-O's HP is something you really have to consider, and that actually heals us all the way back to full, with Regidrago having so much HP. But the main thing to consider is that Kommo-O does have a lot of HP to give up, you know, between taking damage and boosting, but between Sinistcha and Drain Punch, you can heal back pretty quickly, and now they just go for Bleakwind. Perfect. Kommo-O dodges it. Espeon actually takes a hefty amount from that, but that's fine. And I'll be able to Psych Up now. Perfect. And that's actually a big deal as well, because it means that I get that speed boost. So the Clear Amulet here really paying dividends right now as they bring out Urshifu, okay? We're going to be Water Urshifu. Last turn of Tailwind. I wonder if I ever want to go for another boost here. We do have the Ogwaff Berry. Like, if I had to guess, Urshifu should protect here. But I guess you could go for, like, Icy Wind into Espeon. And then Surging Strikes. I don't mind going for Draining Kiss. You know, the thing is, if they do protect here and I double up and knock out Tornadus, I actually just win the game off that. And Tornadus probably doesn't carry protect here. So I'm down to just Stored Power into Tornadus and Iron Head here, because if you protect with Torn, you just lose. Or sorry, if you protect with Urshifu, you just lose here, I think. Oh, but they're Scarfed. Okay. Scarfed is fine, though. It's like, yeah, you get the close combat off, but you reveal at your choice Scarf. You don't have speed control now. And you're locked into that for the rest of the game, so I should just knock out Tornadus. Stored Power almost just gets the KO there itself as its Focus Sash. Okay, cool. That's why I wanted to double up onto it. And we have Iron Head here. Beautiful. Yeah, the Clear Amulet on the Kommo is interesting because I normally just remember it mainly for Intimidate from Landorus's, but actually ignoring the speed drop from Icy Wind was so critical in this battle as well. So really everything coming into play here. So Tailwind peters out on both ends. But the key thing is that this Espeon will be able to just go for the Store Power to get the knockout onto the Urshifu. And Kommo-O's done his job in this one, so we'll Store Power, get the KO here. And I might as well Drain Punch as well. I'd rather have Hisuian Arcanine as my last one to deal with Ogerpon. I don't think Ogerpon should knock out Espeon. Yeah, barring a critical hit, because you already committed your Terra. Like, the debate is whether or not I should switch Kommo into Arcanine here to get that Intimidate, because, like, this is going to faint to a close combat anyway. It's actually an interesting consideration. Stored Power. Nah, I think I will just store power and Drain Punch here. Yep, so they just close combat. But we'll get the knockout onto their end. Ogerpon will get an attack off into Espeon, but with the defense boost and with Ogerpon not being able to Terra here, I don't think you can get the knockout onto us. And then we'll get a free switch in into Hisuian Arcanine, and I can just go for Extreme Speed plus Stored Power again, I think. Also, I should have Draining Kissed here for more healing. Actually, Draining Kiss would have covered for, yeah, like, any... Well, I guess it comes down to whether or not they crit anyway, but it's just more optimal to Draining Kiss there because we know that they're locked into close combat. So it's going to be Swords Dance on Ogerpon. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I don't see how you beat the Extreme Speed. We don't even need to really E-Speed, right? Because I think Stored Power plus Flare Blitz. Well, I guess it's a question of, does it make a difference? If you're Swords Dance, you're normally going to be Ivy Cudgel, Spiky Shield, and like a Grass type attack. But the main thing here is that Espeon copied all those boosts, right? So I think it's fine to just Stored Power here and Extreme Speed. Yeah, I don't see how you live 2 Extreme Speeds and a Stored Power, and they just end up forfeiting. Yeah. The play for them was to try to go for a crit onto the Espeon, but the play on my end was to go for Draining Kiss to heal back to full with Espeon. So I think I definitely didn't play this game perfectly. I'm trying to think which other turns could have been improved on. Early game was interesting because given their Tailwind plus their Terra play, I could have just gone for my own Tailwind plus Clangorous Soul immediately, and that would have put me into an even better position. I think I was just too wary of taunt, and I wanted to show it respect. And what I was thinking is, let's say they taunt Kommo on turn 1, right? And I get Tailwind up. Then what happens is turn 2, I can taunt their Tornadus to deny them Tailwind or taunt, and then Clangorous Soul. The Clear Amulet, by the way, was definitely the MVP item of that matchup, and the main reason for that is I had missed it initially, right? But the Regidrago was just naturally faster than Kommo because I'd forgotten that the Clear Amulet negates that speed drop, and so what that speed drop allowed us to do is that it allowed us to outspeed the opposing Regidrago under Tailwind, and that was such a big deal because without the Clear Amulet, if I just bring out Espeon, then they just go for Dragon Energy again, and they just KO Kommo before I can move. But instead, not only do I not get knocked out, I knock them out, and I heal all the way back to full HP. And so, yeah, the Clear Amulet here means that Kommo under Tailwind just becomes an even stronger menace. One of the main things is I actually hadn't seen that interaction just because most Tornaduses now actually don't carry Icy Wind. If you go on Peakalytics, it I think only shows like 4% usage, and the main moveset is like Tailwind, Bleak Wind Storm, Taunt, and then one of like Rain Dance or Sunny Day, occasionally Protect, for example. And so Icy Wind is less popular than all of those moves. But yeah, I think that game really demonstrated the value of Clear Amulet as an item, and like I said, I had mainly seen it being able to block Intimidate from like Landorus Therian, for example, but without that Clear Amulet, I think I very likely actually lose that battle, so yeah. We've got Landorus, Hands, Goldengo, Empoleon, Ogerpon, and Tornadus. Really cool to see Empoleon. I made a video about it if you want to check it out. Really fun Pokemon, super interesting. We don't really have stat drops here, which is good. They have Goldengo, though, which I think is one of the biggest issues for this team to go up against, so I'm not very happy seeing that, personally. With Goldengo... Oh, never mind. We do have Hisuian Arcanine. I was like, we don't really have stat drops, not really relevant. I have an Intimidator here, though, and Oh, this is actually really tricky, because against Goldengo teams, I actually almost always want to lead Hisuian Arcanine. I'm thinking it's Kommo, Iron Hands, Hisuian Arcanine in the back, Espeon is the 4th. Could be torn over Espeon, though. Torn allows me to Fling, which is nice. And it obviously lets me set up Tailwind. I'm gonna go with this. We'll see how it plays out. I think opposing Tornadus teams are always stressful, just like you saw in that first game, because I have to worry about Taunt, and Taunt being able to deny our setup is just so bad. So my hope here is to be able to get Arcanine position out against Goldengo. I think that's the most pivotal part of this matchup to me, but it's going to be Hands and Empoleon. Okay. I'm actually really okay with this. I think the main debate is, do I want to consider going for a Terra with Kommo? Booster Energy. Attack? One thing to consider, that's actually really cool. The synergy there is you get an attack boost, and if I try to intimidate you, it activates Defiant on Empoleon, right? I wish I brought Sinistcha out against this duel specifically, but I needed the Arcanine, I think, for Golden Go. So our Iron Hands has like 60 speed EVs, so I wouldn't be surprised if we had the faster Fake Out here on turn 1. I'd like to just Clangorous Soul here. Fake Out. Iron Hands. Cool. We get Fake Out off. They flinch. I thought about committing my Terra there. I don't think I feint to an Ice Beam anyway, and then I can heal all the way back up with Drain Punch next turn is my logic. Yeah, unless you're like Specs and Empoleon. Oh. That's really cool. Yawn. So it's support oriented. Do you have Protect with it then is my question. Because I'd like to Drain Punch you right now. I could Volt Switch here, but I think I need to just get Espeon out immediately so I can Psych Up next turn. Empoleon switches, okay. That's a great switch. Very nicely played. Ah, wow. I was assuming Assault Vest offensive Empoleon, but the Yawn actually changes everything here. And Golden Go's already a tricky matchup. This is even harder now. Yeah, that's a beautiful play by them. Not much I could do there other than, I guess, Drain Punch hands. I could have considered going for a second Clangorous, so I think that would have been really interesting. Maybe that was the play, so then Espeon gets even more boosted. The more I think about it, the more I actually really like that option, because it covers for switches. I think, like, Ghost-type switching in is one of the hardest things for this team, right? Yeah, so I mean, I have to burn a turn here with Kommo, but the upside is I at least get this Psych Up off. Iron Hands now switches, okay. Back out into Empoleon. Yep, makes sense. Yeah, the synergy between, like, just having that Ghost-type switch in is such a big deal, honestly. So, that was really nice. But I think this turn is interesting because if you actually don't knock out the Kommo, it gives me the opportunity to just wake up and Drain Punch next turn. It's nasty plot Golden Go, okay. Curious about the Terra type on that. But here I'm going to just Drain Punch Empoleon and I'm going to protect with the Espeon. Yeah, I should have gone for a second Clangorous Soul. It would have been risky, but... I mean, it is extremely risky because if they just stay in and, like, Ice Beam Drain Punch and get the knockout, we just lose off that. Kommo does wake up. Okay, that's huge. Means I get this Drain Punch off into the Empoleon. It does not get the knockout, though, but it does so much damage. And that in itself is a big deal because it's not like Espeon does that much into it, right? So this is a very bulky Empoleon set with the berry and support-oriented rather than offensive. And they just go for Make It Rain. Okay, that's fine. I don't think this KOs. Yeah. Okay, down to +1. And Ice Beam. Okay. But Kommo getting the one-turn wake there was really huge. Getting that amount of burst damage, I think, is such a big deal right now. So this allows me to pivot in Hisu and Arcanine, and even though it awkwardly activates competitive, I'm still okay with that. My main question right now is the Golden Go. What Terra are you? Because I think Water Terra is decently likely. I think Golden Go, like, considers a defensive Terra here, or you protect and then try to knock out my Arcanine with your Empoleon. Oh, it's not even competitive. Okay. That makes sense, though, on this defensive set, I guess. I guess my fear is, like, Stored Power doesn't get the KO onto Empoleon right now. Because the obvious play I want to go for is just Flare Blitz into the Golden Go, right? But I actually think I'm going to Flare Blitz Empoleon here. And Stored Power into Golden Go, expecting a defensive, like, Water Terra. We're going to see a Terra here. So the question is, are you Steel Terra or Water Terra right now? But either way, I think getting rid of the Ghost typing is actually a huge deal, because it opens the door for Iron Hands now. Well, that Draining Kiss looks even better now. It's Dragon Terra Golden Go, which makes sense. Dragon Terra is picking up in popularity thanks to all the Ogre Pawns that exist in the format, but we almost just one-shot with Store Power. Wow. If that got the one-hit knockout, I think the game's just immediately over, but even then, this is still a big turn for us, as Banded Flare Blitz gets the KO there. Really interesting. That's such a cool way to use Empoleon, because so many people expect it to be competitive and offensive. They're going to Shadow Ball, but I think we should survive this. I want to do the damage calc after this game on that, because I was expecting to survive with a little bit more HP, but we survived on 1. Wow. Because we had +1 special defense. They were +1 special attack. Landorus comes out. Okay. I think I probably want to commit Fairy Terra to Espeon. No, we can normal Terra E-Speed things now as well, right? I don't know how fast their Landorus is, I guess is the question. Because if we're faster with our Arcanine, I could just double up onto this right now. I wonder if Stored Power also just one-shots into Landorus. Like, personally, I'd like to pivot into Iron Hands right now. And then Protect. And if I can bait out a Protect from either slot, then Espeon just gets the knockout the subsequent turn. But I don't know if it was correct to do that, and it may have been better to have just stayed in with the Arcanine there. So, hoping to bait out a Protect here. For example, if you Protect Golden Go and Stomping Tantrum into Espeon, okay, amazing. This is already really good. But yeah, with this play now, this next turn, I just fake out Landorus, Draining Kiss into Golden Go. It's EQ, but that's fine. I guess if you're Banded EQ, do you ever get the KO here? Let's see. I do think now, though, with the Intimidate, it's time to just Fairy Terra the Espeon. Okay, perfect. So I think we're good here. Yeah, the Dragon Terra here works against him. I was personally predicting Water Terra just because that's what people were using in previous formats, but now I can fake out into Landorus and Draining Kiss into Golden Go. And Fairy Terra Espeon with Intimidate support from Arcanine, I think, just KOs everything and heals back enough. But that Shadow Ball surviving on 1 was absolutely nuts. So we fake out. Perfect. We Draining Kiss. Golden Go is a really hard Pokemon to deal with this team, in my opinion, especially the Nasty Plot variant, because like we just don't threaten it with enough damage quickly enough. And what was so interesting about Team Preview here is them having the Empoleon and me being scared of it, right? Like, I actually lead his... What I learned from a lot of the games that I lost against Golden Go was that I should be leading the Hisuian Arcanine. But in this matchup, because they had Empoleon, I was like, I don't really want to. But then it turns out that they're this defensive set, right? So Iron Hands comes out. I'm happy to pivot back out into Arcanine this turn and then just Protect. Pivot into Arcanine, Protect here. If Arcanine faints, that's fine. I get a free switch in, back out into Iron Hands. And at this point, I can Stored Power or Draining Kiss either slot. I could still lose the critical hits, though, so that's the one thing I want to be aware of. The good thing to know is that the Iron Hands here is not Assault Vested, but I guess in some ways that works against us because it means that they might have access to Protect. Okay, nice choice to Stomping there, but that's fine. The main point here is to just get the Intimidate off. Cool. And just Drain Punch. Yeah, that works. I don't know if I needed to actually play that safely. I think Espeon probably could have just launched an attack here. If Landorus had Earthquake and Stomping, I think it's probably just Assault Vested here, if I had to guess. I'm happy to just fake out Landorus. With the Intimidate on Iron Hands, I just don't think you're really ever KOing Espeon. I think the main thing I probably... Ooh, actually, if I go for Fairy Terra, you can Heavy Slam me. Wait, that's actually a pretty big problem, so I'm not going to Terra here. I'm just going to fake out plus Stored Power Landorus. Okay. Yep, Landorus did survive. That's why I went for Fake Out. Should be Assault Vested. They Wild Charge, 98, down to 52. Perfect. Cool. Does Draining Kiss get the KO here? I'm actually not 100% sure. If I Terra, it does, but I really don't want to lose to them just like wildly heavy slamming Espeon here, and I will survive another Wild Charge bar critical hit. The reason I haven't been targeting the Iron Hands here is just out of respect of it protecting, because I don't want Landorus to just be able to get a free Earthquake or Stomping off, given that I know it's Assault Vested. So Stored Power gets the KO there. We get Drain Punch off. And I honestly think in a 1v1, like, my Iron Hands just wins, because they're intimidated and I'm not, right? So even if they were to crit Espeon here, I think we'd still be in okay shape, even though I have less HP. But Espeon does survive. Perfect. Yeah, I don't know if I played this endgame flawlessly, though. I think I, like, just really wanted to show respect to this, but, yeah. In the end, we didn't even need to Terra, but I think I could have played this endgame differently, where, you know, the turn I switch in Hisuian Arcanine, for example, I go for the Terra with Espeon. If I just stored power Iron Hands and we just get the knockout there, the game's also just probably over. But, yeah, I wanted to respect it protecting, and I launched an attack into it. But I think in retrospect, when it was Hands Landorus and I switched into Hisuian Arcanine, I can just stored power that turn, right? Because that should just knock out Iron Hands. Yeah, the more I think about it, I think that was the right play. Because even if you protect, I have the Intimidate, I pivot back out into my Iron Hands, and I have Fake Out plus the stored power again next turn. So, yeah. I guess the other thing about this endgame was if I go for Fake Out, it obviously boosts the power of Stomping Tantrum, so that's a little bit scary. But in this endgame, I think we were fine. It was just that I opened myself to more opportunities for critical hits, and the damage rolls in this game were insane, right? I wonder if, like, they get 2 really high rolls on Espeon, whether or not that also gets the KO, but given the first one, I was like, I think we're probably okay here. But I didn't actually go for Terra, right? If I, like, went for Fairy Terra Draining Kiss, I think that also could have been interesting, but the reason to not Terra, once again, was out of fear of Heavy Slam. And I didn't, like, because it's an attack booster energy Iron Hands, I wasn't as sure of what attacks it would be running, and I thought Protect would make more sense, especially because they've revealed the Earthquake on Landorus, they revealed Assault Vest, so I could see a world in which they, like, Earthquake while protecting with the Landorus slot. But let's do that damage calc against the Golden Go, because I have no idea. So what's interesting about this damage calc is it's pretty contingent off the special attack investment that Golden Go has. This Golden Go set with Nasty Plot, Timid 100 special attack EVs is what Sempra used to get top 8 at the 2023 World Championships. And so this one actually only does 77 to 91%. Like, that's why I was thinking Espeon would survive with more HP, basically, right? But let's say you make this Modest instead of Timid, that already moves the needle pretty significantly. If it were Modest 100 attack special attack EVs, we actually survive all the time. So, you know, if they have, like, max special attack, for example, then it's actually a 50-50 coin flip there. So the upside is, even in the bulk or most offensive spread, we actually still survive half the time. And, you know, if you lower this to, like, 80, for example, then we survive pretty much every time. So I'm not sure how much special attack investment the Golden Goal was running, and that damage calc was based on that. But as you can see, even if it's max, like, it's still a coin flip, which makes me feel a little bit better, because like I said, I was expecting it to survive all the time, and that's because most Nasty Plot Golden Goes don't run that much special attack investment. I feel like they're in the range of like 80 to 120, for example, right? If you're 120 here, we're guaranteed to survive as well from Modest, and if you're 80, obviously it does less as well. So that's why I was like, Espeon should survive this turn, and the fact that it brought it all the way down to 1 HP kind of caught me off guard. So that Golden Go has more special attack investment than most Nasty Plot Golden Goes that I've run into. But I'm curious if it was like max special attack, or, you know, let's say they're like 180, for example. What does that calc look like? It's only a 1 in 4 chance to KO us. But we did get lucky with a bunch of things, right? Like, maybe we got a lower or a better damage roll with the Shadow Ball here. And then the main thing was that the 1-turn wake up from the Kommo to get that Drain Punch off into Empoleon, because it allowed me to heal back more. And more importantly, just deal damage into Empoleon, because I think Empoleon was kind of annoying for our team to deal with. But it was a really interesting support-oriented set rather than the offensive set that we've seen. Okay, we've got Roaring Moon, Landorus, Flutter, Milotic, Hands, and Ogerpon for this one. Feels like a good game for Kommo and Espeon. The question is what to lead with. I think Hands Flutter is probably the lead I'm most concerned about. My general response to that would be a Kommo Torn lead. Espeon back, and I think Hisuian Arcanine is the 4th, even though they have Milotic. Could be a Sinistcha game, though, with Strength Sap and Machagacha. Ability to spread burns with this is, I think, is really, really nice. Just a little bit worried about its matchup in an Ogre Pawn. Intimidate from this is really, really valuable. Okay, I'm going to bring Arcanine. It's one of those where I think if my opponent brings out Milotic in the early game, we actually get to capitalize off that a lot because it's not very offensive without a boost. And so it enables Kommo and Espeon to potentially just set up, which I think is really nice. So let's see. If I were my opponent, I think I would consider leading a combination of like Roaring Moon Flutter, Iron Hands Flutter, Iron Hands Roaring Moon. All of those put on pressure, but you could lead Milotic if you want to bait out the Hisuian Arcanine, but I'm not going to lead Arcanine for that reason. Yep, so they go with Milotic. That's fine, though. Booster, presumably speed. Oh, attack. Okay. I'm down to Terra and just Clangorous Soul immediately. And I'm actually willing to taunt into Milotic on turn 1 because I don't think you should put on that much pressure onto Kommo, and I'm worried about, like, setup from Milotic. Like, Coil and Hypnosis were moves that were used in previous gens. Yeah, I'm happy with this because then I can just go for, like, Tailwind turn 2. I think them going for Protect with the Roaring Moon or Flying Terra immediately and just trying to Acrobatics makes sense. But this is what I mean, right? It's like, you brought Milotic, but what are you really pressuring me with right now? Because I think the idea here is I can get this set up, and then I can switch Tornadus into Espeon. No Terra is interesting, okay. Or Protects. Taunt onto Milo. Dragon Dance? Ah, okay, they Tailwind. This works out perfectly fine, though, because I've staggered my Tailwind, so I just get to Tailwind next turn, right? So they were expecting me to go for Tailwind and Clangorous Soul. I wasn't really covering for Haze there, but now I'm even more happy that I did that. Wow. Amazing. Okay, that's excellent for us. I would expect a Protect or a Terra from this now this turn. Now I'm worried about getting burnt by Scald. I think that's the one fear. This is a pretty big problem for Espeon. I'm going to Tailwind with Torn. I don't actually necessarily need a Tailwind, because I can stagger my Tailwind by another turn, which I think is also interesting. Like, I actually don't hate... if Tornadus gets doubled up into, that's greedy, though. Yeah. Okay. I'll just Tailwind and Drain Punch this turn. Like, force their Terra. They don't Terra. Okay. Does this just knock out Roaring Moon? Because if so, that it just opens the game completely, in my opinion. Oh my gosh, nice. Yeah, I guess it's one of those scenarios where it's like, does it even make sense to Terra? But I thought Roaring Moon would definitely protect her Terra in that position, or switch out into Flutter. The fact that it was none of those and I get a free knockout, it puts us in amazing shape. And it's Icy Wind, but we've got the Clear Amulet on Kommo here. Beautiful. So Icy Wind, Haze, Recover Scald, maybe? Let's see what comes out. Flutter? Landorus. Yeah, Clear Amulet is just so busted for us here. Nice. Okay, the one thing I want to be careful of is Bleak Wind Storm activating competitive. It is also the last turn of Taunt, so I want to make sure... I mean, a Stomping Tantrum does only like 30-40-ish% to Kommo, so I actually don't need to worry about the damage there. I'm happy to just Iron Head here. Oh, actually, I have Fling. Wait, yeah. Why don't I just Fling Iron Head into Landorus? Yeah, that's perfect. Fling Iron Head this turn, then Iron Head Landorus again, Taunt Milotic again. They're fast. They're Choice Scarf. Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Waste of a Fling then, unfortunately, but it's okay. They actually Scalded into Tornadus. Yeah, I think if you targeted Kommo there and they got the burn, this game would look pretty differently as well. So I think they could have had better targeting there. Yeah, I should have accounted for it being Scarf Lando. Even then, this Tornadus isn't that fast, honestly, so I think that may have just not been the best play, but I've staggered my Tailwind by a turn. Your Stomping does less than half. I can just Protect right now and go for Taunt onto Milo again to prevent Haze once again. And then just Iron Head into Landorus, pivot Tornadus into Espeon, and then Psych Up. One thing to think about, though, is Flutter being their last one. Also, they haven't Territ, right? So, yeah, I just really want to respect Haze right now from this. Okay, Stomping again. I would think Stomping and Scald into that slot, yeah. Cool. I just want to be extra careful about clicking Bleak Windstorm in front of a Milotic. Like, the worst thing to do right now is give Milotic an unnecessary +2 special defense boost. Tailwind peters out. So we have this extra turn of Tailwind, which is perfect. We've staggered it ideally, so Iron Head now, and we finally bring in Espeon so I can Psych Up. What's going to be important is knocking out this Milotic before it gets another Haze off, because that's obviously going to be a pretty big issue. So they actually pivot Landorus, I would think, into the Ogre Pawn. Ah, it's Iron Hands, though. Okay. Well, Hands is interesting because it does mean you have Fake Out pressure. And this gives them now the opportunity to burn the Kommo as well. But I think once Espeon gets this Psych Up off, it should just win the game, because we just stored power everything for a KO. But that's a great switch in. They Scald into the Espeon slot. Okay. Yeah, I don't know why they're not Scalding the Kommo slot, honestly. Tailwind peters out. It's the last turn of Taunt. That actually does make things kind of annoying here. I'm going to Drain Punch then into the Milotic. And Psych Up into Kommo. I think if they don't click Fake Out into Espeon here, we also just win because I just get the boost. And then I can double up onto Milotic. Taunt was so important in this game, though, for preventing these hazes. Oh, okay. I think the game's just over if they're making this play. Yeah, because I get healing onto the Kommo, and Espeon now is just boosted, so I can just double up into that slot pretty consistently. That's the thing, right? Like, we're not going to do that much damage with Kommo in a matchup like this because Milotic just exists and it's pretty bulky. But, yeah, I thought they were surely going to go for Fake Out there. And that's what, like, if you give this team just one turn to work with, it just opens the game wide open, right? So they IC win, but I can survive another Stomping. Haze is what I'm most worried about right now. It's leftovers, Milotic with Scald, and it's a question of are you running Protect or Recover. Taunt wears off. I'm actually just going to Drain Punch here and Stored Power into Milo, because I don't want to get hazed right now. Landorus will outpace us, I think, because we don't have that much speed investment on either, and they're Choice Scarfed. But that's fine, because I know I survive a Stompy, and I should survive a U-turn on the... Okay, they do have Protect on Milo, though. I was wondering if it's Protect or Recover. I wanted to show respect to the haze there, but it's just going to be Stomping into Kommo, which I'm fine with. Okay. Huh, this actually becomes pretty interesting then, because now you can go for Stomping into Kommo and then Haze. And I'm not sure Stored Power actually gets the knockout onto Milotic. Basically, if Milotic didn't Protect or if they didn't have Protect, this last turn just wins me the game, because then Espeon is just fully enabled. I still feel okay about the position, though, honestly, especially with Bandit Extreme Speed in the back. But it does make this turn a little bit more interesting to play out. I honestly don't think Stored Power KOs this, which is my concern. But I actually do need to deal damage into it. Yeah, if I were them, I'm clicking Stomping into Kommo and then hazing this turn. Okay, I'll go for Drain Punch here and Stored Power. The thing is, with Hisuian Arcanine in the back, we get an Intimidate off onto Landorus. I mean, Stomping still KOs me, though, and it does activate competitive. So, this Milotic is actually a huge pain for us to deal with. But, let's see. Stored Power does not get the KO. Okay. And they do haze. At least the Milotic doesn't have, like, that much recovery. Yeah, Now I can bring out the... I think I actually bring out Tornadus here instead of Tailwind. So that the Iron Hands under Tailwind can thrive. Yeah. Or sorry, Arcanine under Tailwind can thrive. But yeah, Haze is actually such a big problem for this team. Tailwind here. I'm going to focus my efforts on... I mean, stomping into Espeon... Oh, I ended up clicking Draining Kiss there. I meant to back out. That's fine. I'm okay with that. I mean, do you pivot out the Landorus here? They do. Okay. I was debating between protecting and attacking, and the question is, do I target Landorus, which I know can't protect, or I target down the Milotic slot? Milotic doesn't protect. Okay. This is a pretty crazy game, honestly. Draining Kiss, decent damage. I'm getting to a state where I can just click Flare Blitz with Hisuian Arcanine onto everything. And they just Icy Wind, okay. Man, Haze is such an issue, though, because it's like I spent all this time setting up, and like even though I double taunted my Lodix, it was still able to Haze me. Okay. I also wonder if my opponent was scalding the Tornadus, not expecting like a Hisuian Arcanine switch at any point. That could make some sense. I want to taunt here and Draining Kiss. And the idea is to put it in KO range from Hisuian Arcanine. But they protect. Nicely done. Oh, man. This is actually so tough to play through. Fake out protect. Okay. That actually works perfectly, because it's a free switch into Hisuian Arcanine for me with that. They still haven't Terran, which is crazy. Yep, leftovers. I think my last question is, what move do I lock into with Hisuian Arcanine? I need to push the tempo like right now. It's probably Extreme Speed. Wait, this turn's actually fascinating because 2 turns of Tailwind. I can Psych Up this. Yeah. Okay, wait. So who switches here? Like, if I were my opponent, I would actually switch Iron Heads down into Landorus. To re-pivot Iron Hands back in. I'm actually just E-Speed Draining Kissing here. As cool as the... okay, they go for a Terra, which makes me think it's on Iron Hands. But that's okay. Yeah, that's okay. Into Fire. Cool. The problem is I might just lose the 1v1. I don't know. Like, I'm not healing that much with Espeon. I don't have any boosts. And they go for the double. That was actually really smart. This is a crazy game. I don't know if Espeon actually wins 1v1 against Iron Hands, quite frankly. Maybe I should have clicked Rock Slide there instead. But I had no way of knowing what Terra they were going to lock into with Hands. It'll be a 1v1, but with Espeon not being boosted up, I'm not sure I win. I just do such little damage with it, right? And this is the thing, if you have a way to deny those boosts like Haze, it shuts us down completely. So, really nice job like holding onto the Terra this entire game and playing this way. Extreme Speed, Draining Kiss. If I had clicked Rock Slide instead, I think we would have won this as well, but I didn't know what they were going to lock into. Yeah, E-Speed doesn't get the KO there. That was a really good play. I think that Fire Terra, like holding onto the Terra the entire game and then actually getting that Haze off with Milotic that turn was critical. It like the thing in this game was when I doubled up into that slot, because that turn I could have just targeted the Landorus slot instead, but I was so worried about them clicking Haze or Recover that turn because I didn't know what the 4th move was yet, right? I mean, stored power does such little damage here. Like, we would need something like Psyshock. Tailwind peters out. -1. And I still have my berry. I mean, this just does no damage, right? I'm going to protect here, but I think neither Draining Kiss nor Stored Power do more than 10% here, and Iron Hands does way more with Wild Charge or Heavy Slam. So, my biggest, like, I guess, regrets in this game, I wasted the Fling that one turn, because I didn't really account for Scarflanders, which I think was a mistake on my end. But also, running into Haze Milotic and then, like, not denying that final Haze was pretty bad. And I think Milotic in general is just not that easy for us to deal with, right? It was like the combination of them having Milotic and Scarflanders. Like, the biggest turn I can point to is just not knocking out Scarflanders when I doubled up into Milotic, but I was obviously trying to respect Haze. Also, Stored Power does no damage there, so I'm just going to forfeit. But I just want to quickly check the teams. Yeah, Fire Terra Hands is tough, too. It's like Assault Vest, Fire Terra Hands, plus them having Tailwind from Roaring Moon, plus Landorus Therian with Scarf, plus Milotic with Haze and Protect. But I think if I just launched my Iron Head into Landorus to knock it out the turn that the Stomping came out, I guess it's interesting, though, because then you still have Hands, and then you have Fake Out Pressure into Milotic Hazing. Huh. Yeah. But, you know, Haze is basically perfect for, even though I, like, denied Haze, like, turn 1, turn 2, the beginning of the game felt amazing. My opponent mounted an amazing comeback, and it all started with the Protect Milotic plus the Landorus turn, so kudos to them. Yeah, I think if I get the knockout there, I just win, but I think their play was really safe because, like I said, even if I knock out Landorus there, you bring out Iron Hands, and then you can just fake out Espeon plus Haze. And once Espeon's boosts are removed, it's a huge problem. So I think Haze is just as good of a counter as you'll get for this, and even though I spent like so many turns denying it, it still wasn't enough in the end. What I needed to do then probably was to reposition Tornadus so I could taunt. Like, Tornadus basically always needs to be on the field on the last turn of taunt so I can taunt the Milotic again. I think that's my main takeaway from this. Because I had Torn, but I didn't position it, and part of it was because I had boosted up with both Pokemon, but would have been such a hard read to make. But yeah, actually, so I think what I should have done, the problem is I didn't see Milotic's fourth move, so I didn't know if it even had Protect. I mean, Protect is so common, but I was like, what if it's Recover instead? But basically, I think like one thing that I could have done was, this seems kind of crazy, but the turn that they went Stomping Tantrum into Kommo and then Protect with Milotic, I could have pivoted out the Tornadus in for the Kommo slot. But I guess that's still awkward because then you get a stronger Stomping Tantrum until the next turn. Like, I definitely feel like we could win this game, but another suggestion is bringing Iron Hands out, because Iron Hands just is really good into Milotic, but also quite bad into Landorus. Yeah, that was a really interesting one. I think, like, the fundamental thing here is that this team relies so heavily on setup, and so if you are able to get a single Haze off even across 8 turns, it just drastically changes how things play out. But I think my opponent had an incredible patience in that one, right? It's like so easy to tilt after turn 2, where it's like I managed to taunt your Haze, I managed to get the Drain Punch as well, and knock out the Roaring Moon, but the patience to hold on to their Terra that entire battle was a really big deal. I would have had to make a crazy prediction, which would have been Head Smash into the... Yeah, if I had Head Smashed into the Iron Hand slot, then maybe I win, because then I just get the knockout as Milotic goes for the double. You bring out Landorus, I Head Smash again, get the KO onto the Landorus. But then I might still just lose the 1v1 Espeon against Milotic. Like, this game shows Espeon, if it does not get the boost, it just does nothing, right? So it's really important... If you bring it, like, you really need to get value out of Psych Up. I didn't even really consider Haze on Milotic, and now I actually want to check Picolytics, because, like, Milotic isn't really that common. And back when I faced against Milotic in previous generations, it would use Coil and Hypnosis. Oh, this is fascinating. Like, on Picolytics, for example, Scald, Icy Wind, Ice Beam, Protect, Coil, Recover, Hypnosis, Life Dew, Helping Hand, Hydro Pump, Blizzard, Draining Kiss, Surf. Like, Haze isn't even listed in the common attacks here. So that one move changed the outcome of this completely. If you don't have Haze on Milotic, I think we actually just basically win the game after turn 2, because there's just no way to really stop the Espeon and Kommo combination. But with Haze, you get rid of all of my beautiful boosts on the Espeon, and I just do no damage, essentially, because part of it is just getting value out of stored power. So, yeah. it's funny because in practice, I had actually never really run into Haze. I haven't really even considered Haze because it's just not been as part of the meta at all. But that game highlights the value of it. So really nicely done. I thought my opponent executed that super well. And I'm trying to think like how I could have like, is there one turn I can point to where I could have won the game significantly and just like run away with it? The biggest turn I could think of was when I doubled up into Milotic both times. But even then, it's hard because it's like, yeah, if I make the prediction that they're not going to protect, and they do, that's bad. But if I also make the prediction and double up on the opposing slot and Milotic just hazes, that's also really bad. But I think I needed to play better and consider constantly how do I prevent Milotic from hazing. But I don't know. It's honestly pretty hard. So, yeah. Okay, this is just a Reg D team. Dragonite, Chien-Pao, Flutter, Iron Hands, Tornadus, Urshifu. Still a scary team to go up against, though. I think there are a lot of things to worry about here. So, number one is just the Chien-Pao Dragonite lead. It does so much damage. I think Chien-Pao in general is also pretty scary for this team to go up against. But I think one interesting thing we could do is normal Terra Arcanine and do a lot of work with that. For example, if I go with Arcanine plus Kommo-O, I don't even necessarily need normal Terra, I guess. I could do, like, Rock Slide. I definitely want to lead Arcanine here. I think Iron Hands is pretty scary. It's going to be Inner Focus Dragonite more often now. Could go with my own Tornadus. I mean, does it make sense to lead Kommo-O? I guess it applies pressure and that my opponent will probably want to target this slot instead. I really want to bring Espeon here, but like, can I actually get value out of it is my question, because if they bring their Tornadus and Tailwind, it's scary. We easily could have gone with any 4 Pokemon on this one. Yeah, I like still haven't figured out what the best 4 to bring in this matchup are, and there might not be a best 4, right? It might be that you just have to adjust, and that there's no clear 4, which is good for best of 3s, but for best of 1s, it makes it more stressful. Torn Flutter. Okay. I honestly think Flutter, like, blocks into Shadow Ball here, and Shadow Ball's Arcanine turn 1 if I had to make a prediction. Do I want to make a crazy play right now? I'm thinking about it. The crazy... I mean, the thing is just against this lead. Like, if you have Taunt, I'm already in pretty bad shape, I think. This is going to seem crazy, but I'm going to predict that they Shadow Ball Arcanine Tailwind. Or Taunt into Kommo-O, expecting me to Terra. It's so risky to leave Kommo-O like this, but given the lead, that's how I've identified I should play things. Okay, let's Shadow Ball into Kommo-O. It's still fine, I guess. I don't waste a Terra, at least. Twist Band Rock Slide comes out. Huh. I didn't think it would knock out Flutter. I'm guessing Flutter just has no bulk at all then. So we go up 4-2 immediately, which is good, and I don't waste a Terra on Kommo-O. That was a really aggressive prediction, but it's one of those where it's like, yeah, Kommo-O almost always is going to want to defensively Terra in that spot, right? So I'm guessing it's just Pound Knight for my opponent in the back. Yeah. Okay. So, we have a huge lead, but they have Tailwind, and I've taken a lot of damage. Let's figure out how to maneuver this game state. What could I do right now? Like a normal Terra Rock Slide. But I think Sacred Sword going into this slot makes a lot of sense. I personally don't hate pivoting into Espeon right now. And just protecting with my Kommo-O. I could still very easily lose this game, by the way. So even though I got turn 1 right, I didn't expect to get the double knockout there. I honestly thought there was a decent chance, like, both would survive. Just everything is so bulky these days. Okay, good. We bait out their Terra. Is it normal Terra is my question now? I think that would make sense on Dragonite. Yep. Okay. If I had Iron Hands here instead of Espeon, I think this game would have actually already been over after turn 1. So, okay, E-Speed into Kommo-O, good. And then Sacred Sword into Arcanine. Yeah. Don't love getting crit there. Two turns of Tailwind left. If I were my opponent now, I would E-Speed Espeon, Sacred Sword Kommo-O. E-Speed Espeon, Sacred Sword this. I want to protect now. Drain Punch. I considered going for Steel Terra here just immediately. That might have actually been the play, but I was like, with Steel Terra, do I even survive Choice Band E-Speed? I'm not sure. Crunch? Oh, it's Life Orb D-Knight. And they Ice Spinner. Okay, interesting. So I know you have Sacred Sword. You have Ice Spinner as well. I want to bring on Arcanine now. Yep, it's Inner Focus. Last turn of Tailwind. You're at -1 now. I don't think Ice Spinner should KO, so like E-Speed into this and Sacred Sword into this is what I think their play should be, personally. So what I'd like to do is switch out into Tornadus. I think CB Flare Blitz here should get the KO. Yeah. Oh, what an interesting game to maneuver. It's like, it was hard to get the setup going given how offensive my opponent's lead was in my specific lead. But yeah, if I just brought Iron Hands in this game, I think I would have won immediately. So here's E-Speed. Yep, into Espeon, perfect. And we survive. Beautiful. Because it's Life Orb and not Choice Band. Sacred Sword, yep. And we survive. Perfect. Okay, so now I get Flare Blitz off. Perfect, that gets the KO. Now I go for Tailwind, Fairy Terra, Draining Kiss, Chien-Pao. Dragonite faints. We faint. We had to maneuver this in such a peculiar way. But it feels good to have made that prediction on turn 1 because it meant that I conserved my Terra this entire battle. We stall out their Tailwind, I bring out Espeon, and with Fairy Terra and this special defense drop, or sorry, attack drop, I don't think they can win unless they crit an Ice Spinner. So we're going to Tailwind now. We're going to Fairy Terra and Draining Kiss. This is one of those very rare games where Espeon ends up being important even in a non-Psych Up game. It is really rare for Espeon to have value if you don't get the Psych Up off. But in this particular matchup, I thought it would be good against Chien-Pao. I thought it would be... I was like, if they allow me to actually get the Psych Up off, I thought Espeon could also dominate my opponent's team. But, I mean, what was critical was just in the beginning, like, Choice Band Rockslide just one-shotting the Flutter Mane. So, perfect. You get Draining Kiss off. Fairy Terra there, plus Draining Kiss is important so that we don't faint to a Sucker Punch from the Chien-Pao. So that's back to full. Yeah, now even if you... I don't know if a crit even gets the KO, but there's Ice Spinner. It would have been close. Now I can just go for Fling and Draining Kiss again. Yeah, and they forfeit. I'm going to pull up the damage count because I really was not expecting Flutter Mane to just get one-shot by Rock Slide. But part of that's because a lot of players throughout Scarlet and Violet VGC started investing a lot more defensively in Flutter Mane. And obviously that was not the case in that one. So I'm curious, so I want to learn here. So, yeah, it's very likely that Fluttermane just had no investment at all, because even with basically no investment, it's still a 1 in 4 chance to get that one-hit knockout. Like, I was definitely not expecting to just get both knockouts like that. If anything, basically the way I was thinking about the match was I knock out Tornadus early on. I was thinking Shadow Ball would go out into the Hisuian Arcanine. So if I knock out Tornadus, then the next turn I can protect the Kommo-O, I can sacrifice the Hisuian Arcanine, get in my Tornadus, and then I can go for my own Tailwind, because then they can't taunt me anymore. And then I can go for something like Tailwind plus either an Iron Head or a Clangorous Soul. Like, initially my game plan coming into this was actually getting the boosts off, but because we got that double knockout, which I very much was not expecting, I was like, okay, I have to adjust a little bit. The other interesting consideration there is that, like, because most of the times we shouldn't knock out this Fluttermane, if I launch the Iron Head into Fluttermane instead, and Rock Slide, then Tornadus is super low, but then they only get one free switch in into Chien-Pao and Dragonite, which means that the Tornadus slot does not exert as much pressure. Part of what made that endgame tricky is that it's like, yeah, even though I go up 4-2, you bring out your two really strong Pokemon, that's like the perfect combination to have out on the field simultaneously, and that made things a little bit interesting as well. But yeah, I was curious about the calc, so the fact that Rock Slide can even one-shot Fluttermane in itself is kind of wild, just because it's a spread move, but Fluttermane's defense is obviously really low, base 55 on both. It's just like so many people run like a ton of HP and defense investment that I basically never expected that Rock Slide to KO. I don't think I've ever seen Choice Band Rock Slide actually KO a Fluttermane, so that's first time for everything. Anyway, that's going to be it for this one, so thank you so much, as always, for joining me. I think this team was really interesting. I feel like throughout this episode, I didn't really get to highlight Sinistcha as much, but Sinistcha does have a lot of weaknesses to common Pokemon in the format, and it was hard to justify bringing it most of the time, but I think Kommo is a really interesting option, and this set is also pretty unique because it doesn't run Clanging Scales, and Espeon's obviously such a unique partner. I think this team is honestly probably the hardest team I've tried out in Regulation E, as I mentioned in the beginning. So if you struggle with it, I have with it as well. And even after playing a lot of practice games, it's still not the most intuitive because it requires so much setup to get going. But as the games have demonstrated, if you get it going, it's just so fun and you can sweep pretty quickly. And it's just really cool to use Espeon in general, not a Pokemon that I've really seen in VGC for quite a while. So thanks to Nash for the team. Thanks to you all as always for watching. Leave a like if you enjoy, and I'll see you all soon. All right, peace.